Here we have a lovely selection of expressions that we are going to simplify. Now, if you take a quick gander at all of them, they all got parentheses. So simplifying here means get rid of the parentheses, combine any like terms, and if there aren't any, you're done. If there are, you combine them and then you're done. That's all we can do with these. This is not an equation. I am not solving for x. I can only solve when we have an equation, and that's going to be the next set of videos, not this. All right. So our first one, a times the quantity x plus 8, and then minus 43. So that is a distribution. We're going to multiply a through. And we're going to zoom in so my handwriting isn't as bad. So that will become ax, or you could write xa, plus, you could write a8, but it looks a little weird. Because normally when we have a choice between a number and a letter, we'll write the number first. And then minus 43. So I have ax, and then I have plus 8a, but there's no x, so those two are not like terms. And then minus 43 with no variables at all, it's a constant. None of these are like terms, so that is all I have to do here to simplify. I got rid of the parentheses, there are no like terms to combine, done, that's the answer. Now, some people would say that's actually more stuff to type in than before, kind of. So the simplify is relative, almost subjective. All right. So I got the number negative 23 plus 12 times the quantity negative 3x plus 5. So to kind of symbolize the distribution, some people will put the curvy arrows everywhere. All right, so that is our first step. So like order of operations kind of takes hold here, but inside the parentheses, there are no like terms to combine. So we move just outside to that multiplication, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to multiply that 12 through. So the negative 23 just hangs out up front, plus 12 times negative 3x. So 12 times negative 3 is negative 36 with an x, plus 12 times 5 is 60. All right, so I have an x term now, and then I have some numbers. So that is my only term with an x. So I'm going to write that one first. Just math grammar rules, traditionally we write the variable terms before the constant terms, but it doesn't actually matter what order you do them in. And then negative 23 plus 60, those are both constants, so they can be combined. Or 60 plus negative 23, 60 minus 23 is 37, and it's positive. So negative 36x plus 37, or 37 minus 36x. Either of those would work. All right. So when we're doing this simplifying, it's get rid of the parentheses, look for like terms, combine them together, make sure the negatives stick where they're supposed to, and that's it. All right. So let's here. So I have negative 16 minus 9 times 21 minus 2n. So before we do the subtraction, negative 16 minus 9, that doesn't have parentheses around it. So we don't do that first. We need to do that multiplication, the negative 9 times all the stuff in parentheses. So that's our order of operations coming into play. That's why we're doing that multiply before that minus, even though when we read it, the minus occurs earlier, but it is not the agreed upon order. So negative 16 carries down. Negative 9 times positive 21. That's 20 times 9 is 180. 1 times 9 is 9. So 189, but it's going to be negative or minus 189. And then negative 9 times negative 2n. Negative times negative will be positive. 9 times 2 is 18 with the n. And now we are just negative 16 is a constant. Minus 189 is another constant. So those may be combined and they just get more negative. So negative 199 and then 6 more negatives is 205. You can write it first or second. I'm just going to leave it first because that's where it ended up. And then plus 18n, nothing else for it to combine with, so that's it. So I don't like decide to do negative 205 plus 18 and then write, what is it, 187 n? Nope, those do not combine that way. I got negative 205 and then I've got 18 n's. And I don't know what n is to know how those guys will actually combine. N could be 1, n could be 0, n could be a fraction, n could be huge. No way to know. Not unless I know that is equal to something else. When I have an equation, then we can start solving. All right. So 3 times negative 5y. 3 times a negative is negative. 3 times 5 is 15. We keep the y. 3 times 2 is 6. But we need to preserve that it will be plus 6. So when we distribute, we need to see still between the terms addition or subtraction. Now over here, plus, now we have to do 7 times y minus 4. So 7 times y is 7y. And 7 times negative 4 will be negative and 28. Now we go looking for our like terms. So negative 15y's plus 6. 6 is a constant term, so it doesn't go with the y's. Plus 7y, same letter, same power. Those guys can be combined. So negative 15y's plus 7y's leaves us still in the hole 8. So negative 8y. And then I have 6, positive 6, and minus 28. Those are both constants. So 6 minus 28 is minus 22. And there is our expression there. So 2 more crazier ones. Feel free to pause, try it out, and then you could come back and even fast forward me so I sound like a chipmunk till I get to the answer and see if you did it right. All right. So 5 times m plus 2 minus 4 times 2m plus 2 plus 17m. So I'm seeing a lot of m's, so I'm going to have some m-like terms here. And then I'm seeing some just constant terms, so I'll probably have some constant terms. And that's the standard. That's what we're going to see on most of our stuff is it's going to be one variable equations. So you'll have variable terms and non-variable terms. All right, so here that will be 5m plus 10. And then this is negative 4 being distributed through. Negative 4 times 2m will be negative 8m or minus 8m. Negative 4 times 2 again, minus 8. And then that plus 17m just comes down. So now our multiplication is taken care of. I have my terms all lined out. Now I'm going to combine like terms, add or subtract the things that can be combined together. So my first term is 5m. So I'm going to go looking for other m terms. Plus 10, nope, that's a constant. Minus 8m, there's another m. Minus 8, nope, constant. Plus 17m, there's another m. So 5 plus 17 is 22, because you can add in any order. Minus 8 is 14. So we have 14 m's. And then I have a positive 10 minus 8. They're both constant terms. So 10 minus 8 is positive 2. So we're at 14m plus 2. If you don't have the plus in there, then you're saying that you're multiplying them, and that's not what we mean here. So, but that plus is very easy to forget when you're doing all these like terms. Now they're just being mean. It's not mean, it's just, you know how there's those math questions that are kind of like trick questions that really annoy you? This is one of those scenarios. So this minus sign in front of the 4m minus 3n, we need to distribute that minus sign through. It looks weird though when it's just a minus sign. So what I do when I see that is I sneak a number 1 in there. So now it's a -1 that I am going to distribute through. That way I remember to distribute. Because some people will just, they'll minus and then they'll just write down everything that was in the parentheses without distributing. So for me, that helps me remember. All right, the 19m comes down. There's nothing to multiply there. Now -1 times positive 4m is now going to be minus 4m. And then -1 times -3n will become positive or plus 3n. And now I have -2 multiplied onto these. So -2 times 5m. It will be minus 10m. -2 times positive 6n will be -12n. And we bring down the plus 2. Yay for enunciation. All right. So let us look for our like terms. So my first term is an m term. So here's another m. That one's an n. Here's another m. That's an n, and that's a constant. Okay. So my m terms, 19 of them minus 4 of them will be 15. Minus 10 will just be 5. So I have 5 m's. Now our next one, I have 3n. I like the underlining because it tells me I did the thing, so I don't try to like recombine it somewhere else. So 3n minus 12n, that's going to get negative. So we'll be -9n. And then the constant term, it's the last term, so it just comes down. Plus 2. All right, so there is some of the craziest simplifying. Now let's take a glance down here. Okay, these are just crunching numbers. I'm just going to run through these real quick. So we're given an expression, some combination of variables, and we're given some numbers to fill in. So they want us to evaluate the expression. That means evaluate is figure out what number this is going to crunch to, going to equal. So we have a plus b. I'm going to write -7 in place of a, positive 32 in place of b. Here's the catch though, this is substitution. Remember, when we substitute, we are careful, protective mathematicians. We use our parentheses, safe math. So the a, I'm going to put some parentheses there, plus the b. I'm going to put parentheses where it was. Now I can put the numbers in the correct spaces. Sometimes the order will get like flip-flopped, so double check. So a first, that is -7. Let me change the color. Plus b, b is 32, so I put the 32 in there. So I do the first step where I copy all the operations, whatever else is going on down, and I leave spaces for my numbers, and I put the parentheses so the spaces vary. This is the thing. And then I put the numbers in. So it's 2 separate steps, not a do this, then this, then this, then this, where it's like a back and forth kind of crazy. Now here, the numbers are just holding, the parentheses rather are just holding the numbers in place. They're not doing anything. In other problems, those parentheses matter. Like, it'll change the way you look at the problem to interpret it. So -7 plus 32, those we combine, and we get 25. That is evaluated. Now I have m plus n plus p. So we have a larger set of parentheses, and then m plus n plus p. All right, so m is -6. So let's read it again. M, so we'll put the -6 in that first one, plus n, I go look, n is 28, so we're going to put a 28 here, plus p, p is -41, so we're going to put that -41 here. All right. So -6 plus 28 is 22. So this is now 22 plus -41, or 22 minus 41, which is -19. So there is our evaluate for that one. All right, now this next one, x times y. Okay, but still careful math. Parenthesis for x times parenthesis for y. I have copied what we had. Now I will insert the numbers. 13, x 13. Then y in the second one is -4. So 13 times -4. It's a card number, so 52, but it is -52. And the last one, we have several multiplications. So this is another one with big and then littler parentheses. So it starts with k. I look, k is -5 times L. L is -8. And then outside we have m, which is -12. All right, so the -5 times -8. Without the parentheses, it can look like -5 minus 8. That's one of the reasons why I harp on the parentheses so much. So -5 times -8 becomes positive. 5/8 is 40. So now we have 40 times -12. Whew. Well, 4 dozen is 48, so 40 dozen is 480, but negative. All right, and that's it. Next set of videos, we're going to look at solving one-step, one-variable equations, and then we'll kick it up a notch and have some two steps. But that is where we are heading with this.